So I started my career by graduating at Nottingham Trent University in 2000. I did a degree in communication studies, which basically covers linguistics, psychology, sociology and media. And as an aside, because I'm all about brands and logos, I just wanted to show the brand evolution of Nottingham Trent University since I left, and I think where they're at now is a really strong brand. So yeah, as we said, I began my career in print, specifically 17 years ago, which basically makes me ancient to most of you in this room. As an aside, I was very conscious that I've taken the pre-lunch sugar crash slot. So I've got slides with pictures from movies and TV programmes throughout. So, and I was going to do this, but I'm thinking there's a bit of a health and safety issue. So down here, if you can shout out what the film is as they come up, I'll attempt to throw a chocolate in your direction. I'm just kidding. Love Actually. So, as well as being ancient, there's another thing that you actually need to know about me. I need to be open and honest. You said that? Yeah, you know what I was going to say. At least it keeps them interested. Sorry, my throat is really bad. So yeah, so I'm a fraud, basically, and I thought I'd need to be open and honest with you right from the outset. There's all sorts of health and safety issues going on. Because I don't know how to use InDesign, I don't know how to use XD and all these other fancy things that my teams use. And you'll probably see throughout my slides that I'm a bugger for butchering the nice brands that the guys put together. So why on earth am I here, and how have I managed up being able to run a creative agency? Well, TV programme? That was somebody else there. Okay. So basically what my job is, and what actually ties in really nicely with the degree that I did, is I'm a communicator. And it's my job within the agency to bridge that communication gap between the end client and our creative teams, and be able to bring that brief to life. So a lot of things that I did in my degree was a lot about sort of psychology and how humans interpret the world, specifically in media consumption. So understanding that the way something's presented can be taken in a completely different way depending on your experiences, your biases, sometimes your unconscious biases, as to how you take what you see and then make meaning around it. So you've already taken meaning out of me within 20 seconds, actually a lot quicker than that. You've looked at me and you've made lots of assumptions about who I am, the boots, new boots by the way, Joanne. The boots I'm wearing, you know, everything about me within milliseconds, you've made assumptions. And actually in the commercial world, that's where the buying cycle starts. The moment you see something, the moment you see a brand, you start to make assumptions about that brand. So that's why sort of having somebody who can help kind of bridge that communication gap within the creative industry is really important, especially if you are working in the field of marketing, which essentially is the field of human manipulation. That's kind of what we're all about. So it's all about interpreting the brief. So it's about trying to understand what a client is trying to achieve. So they've come with their grand idea, whether it's, you know, they've decided they want their brand to look like X. You've got to try and interpret and get out of their mind what you think they want to see. And sometimes what they think they want to see is actually not the thing that you're going to deliver. So it's quite an art form to be able to do that. And the problem is they can't always articulate it very well as well. They have an idea, but actually them being able to articulate what they want and how they want to see that is really difficult. So this is when, film by the way, I've put it in, any German speakers? German?
Do we have a clue?
No. The interpreter. See what I did there? Okay. So how do we do that? What's the skill that we use to try and get all of this stuff out of our clients' brains? One of the things we do is to try and just focus on outcomes. So we don't talk about what colours they want, what format they want it in. We talk about what you're trying to achieve. And by asking really open questions to be able to draw that out, it's a really important skill to try and get. So if you want to do some freelance work, you've got to deliver something. You've got to be able to get that brief out of the client's brain to be able to understand what you're going to deliver. So lots of questions, what are you trying to achieve? Why do you need it? Where will it appear? And how will it appear? These are really, really important things to get out right from the outset of having that conversation. And then once you've done that, and hopefully you've done a really good job and it's been very thorough, this is when you take that information back to the creative team, or the creative team have also been part of that process. And you collaborate to try and go, okay, well, what actually do they want? But the key here is your client has said they want the moon on a stick, but they've also given you a budget, and that budget doesn't get them what they want. So now you've got to think, okay, right, I really want to achieve what the client needs, but how do I make it commercially viable? And we all want to get paid. You can definitely have that. So you've got to get paid properly for what you do as well. So although I'm not the one producing the creative, we've all established that, my very, very clever and talented team's going to do that, I've got to be able to sort of link everything up. In other words, I've got to take the beautiful work that they produce and make some money from it. So the question now comes around, how do you value that talent? How do you value your creative? And I think in the creative industry, it's probably one of the most difficult things. I'm going to point him out, but there's a chap working with us at the moment who started doing some freelance stuff back in the day and totally undervalued what he was doing because that's what so-and-so over here was doing. And then actually got the feedback that what you're doing is very scarce and very specialist. You really need to charge more. All of a sudden he did. Got more work. It's all about that sort of perceived value. So you have to understand what it is. And there's also the perceived value of what the client thinks as well. So how do they value it? And this, I think, is a great example. I'm going off on a slight tangent, so indulge me. How much do you think this sold for at auction in 2014?
400.
What was that?
400.
400.
750. 750.
750 pounds?
Yeah.
Any advance? 2 million.
What is it?
4 million. 5. Any advance? I'm not selling it. $84.2 million.
A fridge.
When you talk about perceived value, this is the kind of thing you're talking about. This is a really good example as well. So, Jack Vettriano, I think most people have seen that on the Aunties and Uncles living rooms. I don't know how many people have seen Banksy's rip-off. He's done some rip-offs of the major classics and turned them into a bit of a political statement. So, Vettriano's original sold for £750,000. Just a few years later, Banksy's Toxic Waste sold for £770,000. So why is this more valuable than the original? Now the original, arguably, the artistry, it's superior to what Banksy's done. So why is that worth more?
Perceived value. It's cool, the story behind
story, I think that's, you kind of hit on something I'm going to go into later as well in terms of purpose-driven. So what Banksy's done is taken that, twisted it, but he's really captured the zeitgeist of the moment, and it's a movement that we're, you know, a lot of us are on the bandwagon of. So therefore, that's seen as more valuable, and it's seen as more valuable as well because of its originality. I would argue it's a twist on a classic, but it's giving you something completely original, which I think is something that I think is worth bearing in mind when you're creating. How original are your designs? How much are you just going along with the crowd, and how much does somebody go, oh, actually, this is a bit different, I like this, I will pay extra for this.
I got it.
Harry Potter? Who said which one? Yeah, I was going to say it's one of the later ones. Yeah, he's getting on. So, coming back to the creative brief and making sure that you're producing what the client expects. This is when you really harness those powers. And it's also what you implement when you implement what you've learned in terms of the design process. So my guys, I keep referencing because they're sat over here. My guys will go through that entire design process. So all that stuff that you've been learning at college is completely relevant and translatable when you get to working potentially for a creative agency. So starting with that process of, you know, maybe getting your mood boards and sketching your ideas and going through that thought process, and then presenting to the client of where you are going with it is really, really vital to a successful brief. So my head of studio, say hi Mike, is really good at arguing back. So again, going back to when the client really doesn't know what they want to achieve, but they've got some sort of weird idea that they can't articulate, my team will go away and go, right, this is a couple of concepts that we've come with. And then they spend the time saying, this is why. So when the client looks at it and go, well, are you on the right point? Yes, because I've thought of the colours, I've thought of this, I've thought of that, and then we'll take them through the design journey that they went through to be able to fulfill that brief. And 9 times out of 10, the client will go, oh, okay, I get it. Yeah, actually, yeah. Oh, I'm down with that. One thing do not do, which does happen quite frequently, is you kind of go off on a track, you design something, you've got it done because you're on a deadline 9 times out of 10, you've done it, you present back and they go, I don't like it. Unfortunately, you've just spent hours on that. You haven't got the client to buy in, you haven't brought the client along on your journey, and you can't charge for that work you've done because it's your fault for not bringing them along and getting their buy-in early in the process. So it's really, really important to do that. Design trends. Great. Keep current. Look at what's hip. Look at what's happening out there. Look at what you want to go along with. Hip and hap is not a design trend, by the way. Just beware fads. Beware the fact that everybody will jump on that design bandwagon quite early and it will become saturated and you'll start seeing the same things happening time and time again. So that's kind of, you know, where you just need to be careful to not jump on that too much. However, there are certain trends that I think are hopefully set to stay and definitely worth engaging in sooner rather than later. Oh, he was right in there. So we had nervous whether you'd say Infinity Wars. Can I throw that phone? Oh yeah. So start with the end in mind. This really helps with the whole design process as well. So going back to the questioning and understanding the brief, actually the design that you produce, start with how that ends up. Where is that design going to go? What is it going to be on? In the world of print and digital, a same logo will appear across all of these different mediums. So if you are just designing for that, just think about how that will then translate. So you've got a poster as big as this wall, and then you've got a social media post. It's got to look the same. So if you're designing something, so if you go back to the NTU logo in 2000, that logo really doesn't work digitally. It's too small, it's too detailed, there's too much going on, whereas the logo they've got now is perfect for digital. So always start with the end in mind. And this is where the design trends of the moment, which really needs to be embedded in all design now and need to be carried on and really taken into the future, the purpose-driven ones. One being sustainable design. Now, if any of you are looking at product design or packaging design, or both, this is absolutely essential to really understand. So, understanding materials, understanding where the life cycle of what you're designing, where is that going to end up, what is the byproduct of what you're producing. So a couple of lovely examples here. The stained glass window is designed with a material that is solar powered, and actually you can power a small computer using that solar from that window. But if the designers hadn't thought about that process, that design could have been something that aesthetically was beautiful, but actually couldn't translate to this. So they've started with the material. What can I do with that material? Let's work back and make it beautiful. Packaging is obviously a huge one. Do you want the packaging that you design to end up in the ocean killing the fish, or do you want it to become fish food? Again, starting with the materials, adapt designs to make sure that the materials will work. Think about where they're going to end up. I'm going to share this one just because I think it's really neat. Again, sort of hitting on packaging design. So I attended the Packaging Innovation Show last week, and there was a talk by the head designer of Diageo. Very cool guy. And he shared this example, so I've totally nicked it. But this is an award-winning design where he talks a lot about designing waste out, which I think is a great thing to have in mind. So how do you design something where there is minimal, if not completely eliminate the waste involved with it? So this neck pillow for travelling, the packaging is part of the product. So the packaging becomes the pump for the pillow, and the pillow goes back inside the pump, and that's its little case. You know, that is a great example of designing waste out. There is no waste to that product. Unfortunately, now they've introduced big boxes for the display things, but we'll go say that. Who was it? Shall I attempt it? Shall we see whether I can do that? Right, watch your hands. Oh yes! You're catching these. So, designing to reflect the world around you. Again, back to understanding the brief, understanding where your design ends up. Are you reflecting the real world? Do you understand the consumers that you are designing for? Especially if you're in the world of B2C marketing or brand, then that could be a whole range of different individuals. So understanding, and this is my second trend that I think you should really, if you're not already all over it, definitely get all over it, and this is about designing for inclusivity. So your design is going to be seen by lots and lots and lots of different demographics. You know, this goes all the way back to the psychology, understanding your place, your design's place in the world. Who will see it? How will they see it? Why will they see it? And there's a big movement now in inclusive and accessible design, which is brilliant. I don't know whether anybody's seen the latest Apple advert that they've done. I think it's called The Greatest, talking about how they've developed the iPhone to be more inclusive and more user-friendly for disabilities. You know, it shouldn't be a fad, it shouldn't be a marketing ploy, it should be absolutely front and centre of what we do, and it's something as an agency we're starting to spend more time on and trying to bring it to the commercial world. Unfortunately, there isn't the legislation, there isn't the laws really to make design inclusive. There's a little bit that governs public bodies, but that's digital design only. Apart from the Equality Act, there's nothing else which is really shouting about inclusivity. I'm sure in computer games it's probably a bit of a hip thing as well. So, you know, thinking about who you're designing for, start with the end in mind and definitely follow those two trends.
More leverage.
Yay! Who was that? All right, so I've got it above you, so let's see whether I can get it to you. Ready?
Oh.
Hey! What a gentleman. So, I don't want to waffle on too much, so that's pretty much me. I hope some of what I've shared helps pique some interest, makes you want to get into maybe working for a design agency. We're always taking people on, by the way. But I think probably the key takeaway is, like I said right at the beginning, I am a fraud. I don't know how to do the design. However, 9 times out of 10, the companies that you go into, your employer will not know how to do what you do and not understand what you do really, and your client won't. So actually understanding the process that you need to go through to fulfill their needs is as important as the creative that you produce at the beginning. And that is it. My name's Tina Brown and I'm the director at Summit Creative, which is a print design, website and web development agency in Nottinghamshire.
What advice would you give to students that want to break into your industry?
I think anybody trying to get into the creative industry, I think the most important thing is to be able to demonstrate personal development. So there's lots of things that you will learn, you know, within academia, but actually it's then how you translate that into the real world. If you're able to show that you've got a passion for what you do, then it's much easier for you to sell yourself at interview, even if you've not got any actual work experience yet.
What challenges do you face in your role?
The biggest challenge I think we face within the creative agency industry is getting clients to understand the value of what we do. Some will get it immediately and some will think, because sometimes creative can be a bit of a dark art, that it's something they can easily do themselves, so why would I need an agency? So having the ability to be able to get that across and really demonstrate the value of our work is something that can be quite challenging at times.
Who or what inspires you during your journey to where you are now?
I've always been inspired by new things, so I'm really lucky with the creative industry that it's one of those industries that's always sort of looked at the embracing new tech, new ways of working, you know, design trends and all the rest of it. It's one of those industries that never stops still, and that's I get bored easily, so if I was in something that was quite simple and monotonous, then I think I'd struggle, so that's really what inspires me.
How was your experience today?
Do you know what? I really enjoyed today. Nerve-wracking, thinking you're going to be talking to so many people, but actually really nice audience, made to feel very welcome, and it was actually quite good fun.
As an employer, what skills do you look for?
As an employer, we look for passion, motivation, work ethic, that kind of X factor. Skills are good, experience is good, but there's something else that you can bring which is more about you and who you are as a person, and that's what kind of makes a really good team individual.